Welcome to the studio, everybody. I'm Charlie Waymire, aka Sound of Objects. Today I'd like to invite you to join me on a little sonic expedition that started from a very, very unusual sound source that I'll talk about more in a minute. But first, let's have a quick listen and go over the supporting cast. Oh, it's cold. Yuck. I've already done a full breakdown on how I like to use the organ with guitar pedals and guitar amps and all that stuff, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that right now. If you're interested in checking out that video, I'll put a link to that down in the description. But for today, this is really just going to be a simple tone generator. I'm not even using any guitar pedals other than my noise suppressor, which is just killing a little bit of a hum. I just have a real basic organ sound that's feeding the amp. So this really could be a keyboard. I could send a sound from the computer in the control room. It doesn't really matter. I'm just using a really basic organ sound, and I'm gonna send one note at a time. I use my tuner for my congas, and I just hold that note down. So it feeds the amp, which is just going to be a send to the guitar effects pedals over there today. One change I'm making for my normal setup is I'm moving the amp in here into the ISO booth. Usually it's out next to the organ so I can hear it, kind of feel it, make changes quicker. But I wanted a little bit more isolation so I have an easier time hearing what I'm doing in my headphones without also having to compete with a loud amp in the room. This is the effects chain that the microphone is feeding. The mic itself is hooked to a Mackie mixer I have down here below me, and I use one of the aux sends to feed the guitar pedals. As far as guitar pedals go, a lot of usual suspects. The Electro Harmonix String 9 and Lester K, I use those a ton. The Boss RE202 Space Echo, absolutely love this. I mean, those three pedals alone, I could spend hours just coming up with sounds with. But today is about exploration, so I'm gonna try some new things. First off, this Pitchfork from Electro Harmonix. So I'm gonna try this and see if I can't just get some other harmonic textures along with the single note that I'm gonna feed this with. I'm also going to try my Boss SY200, some Big Muff, maybe some more delay. I do actually have two setups here. I have a stereo setup that's from this DI, and I have a mono setup that's on this DI. So I might even try combining my stereo and mono sounds. I'm just gonna try a bunch of different sounds and see what I come up with. Some may be drone-like, maybe atmospheric, some may be more sound design. I don't know. That's kind of the whole point, is just to do some real-time playing and manipulation, because ultimately, this is actually only one layer of the sounds that I'm trying to get today. Remember at the top of the video where I said the inspiration for today's experiment came from a very unusual sound source? Well, this is it, my humidifier. I've been taking a lot of impulse responses lately of unusual sounds to create the spaces for these songs that I've been working on, as opposed to just using regular traditional reverbs. I have a video that's going to come out with all of that really soon. Matter of fact, it may be the video after this one, because some of that stuff is really, really cool. Well, one of those sounds was me pouring water into my humidifier and capturing that with a PZM. And this has turned into one of my favorite reverbs. And for today, it actually turned into the inspiration for the sounds that I was trying to come up with. That is the sound of pouring water into a humidifier. And I did a bunch of different pours, and I made a few different variations of this, but I wanted stereo, so I would pour one and pour another, and I just put interesting ones together so there's a little bit of movement left to right. Just kind of fun that way. So that is our starting point for all these sounds that we're going to go over right now. The first one is kind of the main sound. I want to show you how I came up with this. So I dumped this into PaulXStretch. And then here's what that sounds like. Here, let me just pull this up and loop this really quick. So again, starting point. And then I stretch it. And you get noise, basically. And then I added some harmonics. So now it's starting to get kind of interesting, but the fun part is the ratios. And this is where you can really play around with this. And create some really, really cool sounds. On top of that, that reverb that you hear there, that is the impulse response of the humidifier as a reverb. And I just love it. I've used it so much. So that is sound number one, and that's kind of the main one, really. Then I did a second sound here where I didn't use any of the ratios or the harmonics. Really all I did is stretch it. And I'm not monitoring the direct sound. This is a sound only sending to that IR, the impulse response reverb of the humidifier, and that sounds like this. And I can play with this like for transitions and stuff, or just hit it real fast. And just create different sounds with it that way. That to me feels kind of like something you use with transitions when you need to float from one thing to the other, and you just have that kind of come in and out. But we'll see. Might be able to be used in a lot of ways. And the third one, I call this my glass pad. So I've stretched it the same amount as the original pad, but the difference is I'm not using any harmonics, and I'm using some of the tone and noise features, and I am still using the ratios. And this sounds like this. Just kind of constantly evolve. It's very kind of glassy and atmospheric. And so I can control that. I'm not sending that to any other reverb. That way I can ease it in and out exactly kind of where I want it, or however it feels. I really don't know how I'm going to use these yet. That's just going to be my starting point, is those three sounds that I can use to blend with the sounds coming from the organ. To make all this easier to manipulate in real time, I loaded a really simple Logic session with just a few instances of PaulXStretch with the humidifier IRs loaded onto my laptop, and I have it sitting next here to the guitar pedals. This isn't exactly an ideal setup because I don't have a controller for this computer, so any manipulation I do in PaulXStretch or just fading the different instances in and out with the fader, I'm gonna have to do with the trackpad, which works, but it is kind of cumbersome, especially if you're trying to dial things in and pay attention to where your finger is on the trackpad. If all of this goes well and I either like this way of working, or it just seems like it might be a great addition to what I'm already doing, I'll probably get a little controller that I can just keep out here so I can control things with knobs and some faders. as opposed to the trackpad. But today, this is what I have, so it's gonna have to suffice.